So Nintendo just launched the Switch 2 for $449.99, and the internet had opinions. That's 50% more than the original Switch cost back in 2017. But here's what's wild. Within 4 days of launch, they sold 3.5 million units. Websites crashed when pre-orders opened, sold out everywhere. So what changed? What's actually different inside this thing that justifies the price jump? Let's break down what Nintendo actually built. Inside the Switch 2 is a custom NVIDIA chip called the T239, built on Samsung's 8nm process. Your iPhone uses 3nm technology. PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X use 7nm. Nintendo's using older, larger transistor technology, yet this performs way better than the old Switch. The GPU has 1,536 processing cores versus the original's 256. That's 6 times more graphics horsepower. How does older tech deliver modern performance? NVIDIA calls it optimizations for ultra-low power. Instead of cramming transistors into tiny spaces and fighting heat, they spread things out and tuned for sustained performance. The chip can run at 1.4 GHz when pushed. Nintendo runs it at 561 MHz. Handheld, 1007 MHz docked. Lower speeds mean less heat, no thermal throttling during marathon gaming sessions. The Joy-Con controllers attach completely differently now. The old Switch used a sliding rail system, plastic tracks that wore down over time and collected dust. Your controllers got loose, drift happened, lawsuits followed. The Switch 2? Strong neodymium magnets. You can hear them snap into place with that satisfying click. But magnets create a new problem. How do you release them? The solution is a small mechanical button on each Joy-Con that pushes a cylinder outward to break the magnetic seal. Simple, but effective. The magnetic system does something unexpected, though. Because the connection is more precise than the old rails, these Joy-Cons can now function as computer mice. Nintendo literally turned game controllers into pointing devices. This opens up PC game ports that would have been impossible on the old Switch with just thumbsticks and touch controls. Nintendo went with LCD instead of OLED for the screen, and people had thoughts about that decision. The Switch OLED exists. It looks beautiful, so why go backwards? Turns out this LCD does things the OLED Switch can't do. It's a 7.9-inch screen running at 1080p resolution with a 120Hz refresh rate. The OLED Switch? Locked at 60Hz. This LCD supports full HDR10 for better contrast in compatible games. The OLED Switch? No HDR support at all. Nintendo's using something called a wide color gamut panel with quantum dot technology. Without getting too technical, it displays significantly more colors than standard LCD screens, while maintaining the higher refresh rate and HDR capabilities that OLED couldn't provide at this size and price point. Every panel goes through 15 different calibration stages during manufacturing to ensure color accuracy. This isn't just any LCD, it's a specifically engineered display for high-performance gaming. So yeah, it's not OLED, but it has features OLED couldn't deliver. Sometimes the older technology is actually more capable for what you need. April 2nd, 2025. Nintendo announces the Switch 2 during a direct presentation, sets the price at $449.99, and schedules pre-orders for April 9th. Then, April 4th hits. New tariffs announced. 46% on goods from Vietnam, where Nintendo manufactures the Switch 2, 145% on accessories from China. Nintendo suspends pre-orders. The gaming world waits to see if the price holds. For 3 weeks, nobody knew what would happen. Would Nintendo eat the costs? Would they raise prices? Behind the scenes, Nintendo had already stockpiled hundreds of thousands of units in US warehouses because they'd anticipated tariff uncertainty. That buffer bought them time. April 24th, pre-orders finally reopened at the same $449.99 price. Walmart, Best Buy, Target, their websites buckle under the traffic. 3.5 million units sold in 4 days. The tariff situation didn't stop anything. It just delayed it. So what are you actually getting for $449.99? 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5X RAM, triple what the original Switch had. Games can be more complex, textures higher resolution, worlds bigger. 256 gigabytes of internal storage, 8 times the old Switch's 32 gigabytes. Add up to 2 terabytes via microSD express cards if needed. NVIDIA's Ampere architecture with ray tracing and DLSS support. The same graphics tech powering desktop RTX 30 series cards, adapted for handheld gaming. A custom chip designed over multiple years by NVIDIA and Nintendo together. Jensen Huang said they had to reinvent everything for this console. You can see it in how they optimized an 8-nanometer process to compete with devices using much smaller transistors. Plus, backward compatibility with most original Switch games, game chat for voice communication, and GameCube games through Nintendo Switch Online. The Switch 2 isn't trying to be a PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X in portable form. Those consoles use cutting-edge 7-nanometer chips running at much higher clock speeds and consuming way more power. Nintendo made different choices. They used an 8-nanometer manufacturing process that's more mature and easier to optimize for heat management. They run the chip at lower speeds to prioritize battery life and thermal efficiency over peak performance. They picked LCD over OLED to enable 120 Hz and HDR capabilities that matter more for gaming than perfect blacks do. Every one of these decisions is a trade-off. Less peak power but more sustained performance. Less cutting edge but more reliable. Less flashy but more functional. And honestly, those trade-offs make sense when you're building something that has to work as both a handheld and a home console, that has to run for hours on battery, and that has to stay cool enough to hold in your hands. Next time someone argues about the price, you'll know what you're actually paying for. Not just newer specs, but smarter engineering.